live from the heart of Lincoln, America.
Welcome to Ticket Weeknights
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome to Inside the Huddle. As you can see, that big head dude is my special guest today. This is Jay Foreman. Inside the Huddle is brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. To take care of your image, all your imaging needs, and give you a detailed plan to alleviate some of your pain. With that being said, this man right here is one of my best friends, but has always been a pain in my you-know-what. Without further ado, one of the best black shirts ever, Mr. Tony Ortiz. Welcome in to Inside the Huddle, my brother. How you doing?
My brother, thanks for having me so very much. Hey, did Advanced Medical do a screening on the size of your head as well?
Listen, if people can see this, listen, Tony, that head you got in there, listen, I know you used to have the high fade, but the head that you have now, I wear a hat so I can hide mine.
Well, you can hide yours. I
you
think on my head, I'm the only head in the
class.
country. I'm ahead of the class, and I'm the only head in the country that you can see CTE on its way. But that's just me.
Listen, if people don't know, Tony, we're going to bring it way back, man. We're going to do about 2 good segments. We're going to go about 20 minutes and then another 10 minutes. People, look, I always say this. There's guys that came in and were phenomenal players, and then there's so many black shirts. Obviously, the black shirts hadn't been playing like black shirts up until last year. But let's take it all the way back to Waterbury, Connecticut. Talk about your high school process, who recruited you, why you chose the Nebraska, because you're from New York. Obviously, Connecticut's pretty close. That's a long way from home. People don't understand, a lot of us, including myself, we came from all over the parts of the country. Talk about the original reason why you chose Nebraska, how Nebraska found you, and what made you take the leap to come to Nebraska, because people don't understand USA Today All-American, which is equivalent to 4 or 5, probably 5-star recruit. Talk about the process of choosing Nebraska over essentially everybody in the country.
Yeah, so thanks for that. So, yeah, taking you back to 1992, 1991, maybe just looking into high school football for the first time. Remember, I only played 2 years of high school football. I was really a track kid who played football. And so when I went to Penn State camp just with my buddies, I got in the car and went with them. I ran a 4.3 there, and it just started snowballing from there. So they offered me, and next thing you know, Paul Pasqualoni starts coming to the house from Syracuse. Joe Paz,
he got a big head. He got a big head.
He got a big old head too.
Yeah, he got a watermelon.
Small neck, large dome.
Yeah.
But anyway, funny thing, Sandusky used to call, and I was probably too old for him at the time, but he
called you at night. He called you at night.
He called me at 9, 10 o'clock at night just to see how I was doing.
We won't go there, man. We won't
go there. But Joe Paul used to call. He used to write. And then Coach Osborne started calling, started writing. And I wasn't a college football fan. I wasn't really into college football very much. I didn't know the landscape of college football until these coaches started calling and coming to them. This is pre-internet. This is pre-IG. This is phone calls and letters, right? Constant phone calls, in-person visits, things like that. And then you take these trips, you take these visits. So a New York kid by way of Waterbury, Connecticut, to Nebraska. When the recruiting process started, it was very overwhelming. Every school in the country, for the most part, when you're 6 feet plus, 200 plus pounds, and you run a 4.3 in the mid 90s, it wasn't something that was very common. And so I was a number 1, number 2 hurdler in the country. I was a 10.3, 10.4 sprinter. So it was ridiculous what those numbers look like then. Now it's very common, but then it was uncommon to see.
But your numbers were legit, though. I think a lot of the numbers that guys have now are fabricated.
They're inflated for sure.
Yeah.
Mine were pretty legit, and they were consistent, and you saw that every week with me. It was it was something that that wasn't seen every day, but was certainly something that was that got me all the attention that I garnered. And so when Coach Osborne started calling, he invited me out. Michigan, Clemson, North Carolina, Nebraska were all on my list to visit. I just picked the schools where I felt I had the best relationship with recruiters. And Rich Bisacci was recruiting me out of Clemson at the time. Tommy West was a coach. Coach Solich, Coach T. Sams was from Jersey City, so not too far. So he had connections. So people started reaching out. And so it began from there. Coach Solich came to the house. He came to the school. Coach Osborne came to my high school banquet. Right. And so it was an amazing, I got a funny story there, but it's amazing opportunities to meet these guys in person and then go out to the school. So fast forward to, my senior year, going into my senior year, and I'm taking these visits, right? You don't commit back then, you and I, we committed at the end of our football season, signing day, nobody knows. And so we take our visits. And so,
and before you get going, Tony, what was your top 5? Where did you go visit?
I only visited, the first place I ever visited was Clemson.
Okay.
Nealon Green and Emory Smith were my host. Penn State. And then from there was Nebraska. After Nebraska, I didn't take any other visits. I felt that was
usually the way it goes, right?
That's usually the way it goes. That was it after that. Michigan was next. North Carolina was supposed to be after that. And so once Nebraska hit, I met you. I saw everybody that was I watched a practice. It was ridiculous. I was like, why are these guys in black jerseys? Why are they these guys are huge and they're hitting each other? And my class had Amon in it. My class had Frankie in it, Chris Brown.
Right.
And so I'm going through this group of guys and I'm looking at what we have coming in, and we're having these conversations about what our team's going to look like. And Amon's really putting me deep because he's the local kid, right? So he's like, look, we're really good. We're this, we're that. If you remember our conversation, you were telling me how good we were going to be. That we were like, we're going to win this year. We're going to, we won it last year. Blah, blah, blah. We were in it the year before. And it's just giving me the history of it. And I just from there on out, I was sold. I was like, there's just no way in the next 5 to 6 years, at least while I'm going to be here for the next 5 years, that we were going to lose a game. And I just saw it from that perspective, and that just did it in for me. And I did get the opportunity to have a conversation about being a running back. Coach Solis put the okie doke on me as soon as I got there. He was like, yeah, we got a guy named LP.
Yeah, we got this Amon Green cat coming in. He runs 8,000 yards. I think he's going to be my choice, right?
Yeah, it's like, I appreciate your 3,000 yards and 52 touchdowns in 2 years, but there's this guy here that's a future Hall of Famer. Then there's LP. Then there's Clinton Childs. And there's all these other guys. There's Buckhalter after that.
Jay
Sims. And so what was I to do? Was I going to just get in the portal back then? Or was I going to stick it out and try this linebacker thing, which I was also very good at? And so I was like, I'll play the linebacker deal and say goodbye to running back and say hello to backer and followed you and did what you did, and the rest is history. But those are my reasons, and I'm glad I made that choice.
I remember watching, and back then, it was VHS tapes. You know what I mean? You didn't, it was 2 or 3 plays, and you playing running back. I wanted to ask you because I went through the same thing. I wanted to try something new, right? And my dad plays, so I wanted to do something totally different. How many schools recruited you at running back versus linebacker? And were you ready to let that running back, position go? Because that's a hard thing to do. Because if people don't understand, when you're a running back, you take a pride about yourself on being the most dominant player out there, and then you got to go and kind of try something totally different on the other side of the ball. Talk about the process of not playing running back anymore.
Yeah, I was really an offensive-minded person. I did really well on defense. I mean, I was an All-American on both sides of the ball, essentially. But I was recognized more for linebacker, but in my mind, I was more of a running back. And Clemson wanted me to go there and run the ball. Penn State really wanted me to go there and run the ball. As a matter of fact, I can remember sitting in a Penn State office, actually at a dinner, and looking at the only other running back they recruited at the time. And I forget the young man's name of that class. You may remember him, but he converted from linebacker to running back and had a pretty good career. Curtis Enos. But Curtis Enos converted because I decommitted and didn't go there.
Yeah, Curtis Enos, he went like number 5 in the draft.
He went number 5, so he owes me some money. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were schools that were like, running back is it. This is where you want to go, and to play that. Michigan, I was like a Bianca Batuka fan. I was like, oh, you're gonna send me to Michigan? I want to be like him. He ran hurdles. I want to run hurdles.
Right.
And so, but like I said, it stopped with Nebraska, and Kijana Carter was like, you're gonna run the ball here. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that.
Right.
But it wasn't an afterthought for me. Once Coach Solich was like, that's it, and I was just like, well, that's it. I didn't hold on to it. I didn't.
Yeah.
At that point, it just was like, whatever, get me on the field, whatever I got to do. And that was it.
Yeah. One also thing that people don't realize is how dominant and how great you were at track. And talk about, I always say that people that can either wrestle or run track, they're just internally motivated because, look, you go through high school, like during the day, and you got to run 100. In your case, you're going to win it 99% of the time. But you're running for a bigger purpose because you're trying to run at a consistent time, which you always done. But then you're running for you got to go out there and be motivated, because if you're not motivated, somebody could catch you slipping. Talk about how track helped you be motivated, disciplined, and how you use those tools to make that transition not only to college but to play a new position in linebacker.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you know, track's an individual sport. When it comes down to preparation, you're the one out there. You're the one that's got to line up. You're the one that's got to run the race. If you're not on a relay team, you're relying solely on yourself. And so I had the mindset early on to find out who was the fastest, who was the best at what, and then go against that person, kind of put that mark. And so when I started doing that early on, I would find out, I think the first time I ran a 10.7 was like the second meet of the year. I used to put icy hot on my legs because I thought it would make me faster. Only to compete against, I was wrong, but only to compete against who I thought, people who had locally had the speed and talk of the street. Again, I come from an area that wasn't very affluent in high school athletics. So we played in the daytime. We ran our track. There were no lights. Our track wasn't a Olympic track. It was a 2, 3, 4 lane maybe track. I don't even know if it was rubber, but at that time in Waterbury, there weren't a lot of funds that went into these programs. So much so that our practice gear was our actual gear, right? Yeah. And so our teachers did the very best that they could to teach us. So we were really on our own. I had to learn how to do hurdles over time. I had a couple people teach me, but really just watching other people and pulling up videos or trying to watch Olympic trials and things like that to learn how to do those things and really get the mindset of I'm my own business when it came to this track and field thing. That helped me compete at the highest level. And then that also helped me compete for positions. So when I got to Nebraska and I realized that every day was a fight, then every day for me was another track meet.
Right.
That's all it ever was. So I transitioned that thought process into, okay, I'm competing against this guy in the short run or the long run. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you play my position or not. We're competing every day to get on the field. And that's the mentality I carried over from track for sure.
Talk about competing. I always say that when you come from out of state to Nebraska, obviously you came a lot farther than I did. I only came 6 hours, but you're, essentially
1,500 miles, right?
Right. Yeah. The more than halfway across the country because you got a little bit of that Northeast going. Talk about the process of taking that leap of faith, because people don't understand, even though obviously you're a USA Today All-American and all that, it's still a leap of faith because you're going to a foreign place on the hook at everything that you were told on your recruiting chip and by your, obviously your host and stuff is true. And you come in with a lot of pressure. Talk about that process, because I think it's something that kids always go through, but for you, especially where you were ranked, but then how far you came. I think people don't put enough, credit on that as well.
Yeah. It's probably equivalent to joining the Army, right? I'm leaving the only thing I've ever known, which was my home area. Again, I wasn't into college football that much until it became part of my life. So I didn't have any family outside of those 2 states of the tri-state area. No family. And so now I'm moving 1,500 miles away, which my parents kind of raised me to be as independent as I can, to get away from the nest and go do some things. I never thought I'd move 1,500 miles away. And I got on a plane. Now I'm in the middle of what I would believe to be nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Besides the football practice, we didn't see.
Besides the football practice, you don't see much. I've never experienced flat land before.
Right.
And so I didn't know what that was like. I come from either projects or a hilly environment, right? So now I can, as far as the eye can see, it's wheat fields, it's flat land, stadium, and then a little bit more of that, right? And so that experience to me culturally also was a bit of a shock, because I'm coming from very much an eclectic city life environment to a farm, wholesome, different environments, more pace, suburban, slower pace, take your time, city kid. And so a lot had to adjust. Everything. And then the pressure of performing and playing. I got injured my freshman year, so I didn't get to do the things that I thought I was going to be able to do, probably for the better, but I didn't get to do the things that I thought I was going to be able to do early on because there was so much pressure on me to do X, Y, and Z. You were playing. I was modeled to do exactly what you did. And I remember being told that you're going to come in, you're going to play here, you're going to play next to Jay, you're going to play next to Terrell, and it's going to be 3 of you guys, and it's boom, 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 boom. And it didn't work out that way. We still dominated. However, for me, it was like, okay, I have this setback and I have this pressure to perform. I got to get right. I got to get ready. How do I do that? And honestly, Jay, I mean, I would not have gone through, and a lot of people don't know this, but for me, I wouldn't have gone through that if I didn't hitch my wagon to yours to learn how to be a college football player. You knew that coming in because you had that experience, at least the advice coming from your dad and the people you grew up around of what you were going to encounter. So your mindset was there. Mine wasn't. I was happy to be there.
Once you start getting them 3 square meals and some shorts to go kick it in, and you got a TV in the dorms. Like, I don't know about you. I told Coach Osborne, you stuck with me, brother. Because
you stuck with me. I ain't going, hey, so this is, I can get 2 servings? Oh, well, okay. So it worked out really well. But, ultimately there was a lot of that pressure in that 95 year because, Amon got on the field right away. There was a conversation with a few of us in that class. Chris was getting on the field. Tony, I want you on the field. Amon's getting on the field, those types of things. So, when it didn't work out that way, I kind of felt the overwhelming pressure of what do you do now? But I was able to get through that. So, but yeah, I was there for sure.
Yeah, I redshirted as well. I didn't come in with a lot of accolades. I raised my hand in the redshirt because first of all, I like to kick it. You know what I mean? I wanted to eat, and I knew I had to get bigger, faster, stronger. And to be honest with you, that year was crucial for me. To go through the scout team, get your butt kicked, get the confidence, kind of sit back and watch. The first time that we've ever had to watch. I mean, I can't speak for you, but anything that you've ever done athletically up until that point, it's kind of been plug and play, and I was the same. And I think it helped me long term. Talk about a little bit more of that redshirt year, because even though I was playing, I was right there with you. I saw you get better, and I was like, okay, yeah, he's ready next year because of going through that process. Talk about, I always say that's that first non-conference 4 weeks of that first that you're not playing is the hardest. Because you're used to getting ready, you're watching, you're like, man, I need to be playing. No, I shouldn't. And then once you get past that 4 week mark, then I was like, okay, I once I get to bowl game, I'm good. Talk about that, because I think that's the crucial part in redshirt.
Yeah, it's remember the previous how many years you've been playing up to that point, you were the man.
Yeah.
And now you're the man on scout team. And so you are contributing, and then when it's game day, the very same guy you contributed. Now, I don't know how they do it today. I don't think they do it the same, but the scout team guys couldn't be on the field.
Right. Yeah, so I think they get to dress now, but
they get to dress now. Red shirts had to sit in the stands.
Yeah, way up there too.
Way up there.
Yeah.
You're in the student section, I'm like, and that to me was like kind of demeaning because but I knew I was kind of like, you just have to wait and just work, because I know Monday I'm going to be right back out there banging 9 on 7, but on Saturday I got to sit up here in section 112.
Right.
And so
row 90.
row 90.
Yeah, but I'm gonna tell you, people, when we would be in the stands, we had the bird's eye view because we could. I don't know about you. When I redshirted,
I'm telling you, I was calling it out.
Right, when they were calling defenses, I was like, "Oh, there's Robert and all that." So it kind of was we're getting film study, but
Jamel blitzed again.
Yeah.
That kind
of busted coverage.
Busted coverage. That's all better. So yeah, I knew exactly that, and some of the other guys were with you. That was a fun part of it. Right. But yeah, it was you get through that hump, and then you start to get better, and your body starts to kind of get tenderized in a sense,
right?
Because you're getting through the physical part, and you're realizing mentally that you can hang,
right?
Because you're starting to allow the game slows down quite a bit, and all of a sudden now you see things before they happen. You're calling things out. You're talking the same language. Now you feel you're ready. I don't know if you remember the first time I walked out the tunnel with you.
Yeah.
And it was the best. It was the best experience I ever had. And I felt so ready to roll.
Right.
I George Jefferson walked all the way.
Oh, I know, man. Listen, I mean, we're gonna get to it. I mean, after the red shirt year, I wanted to ask you before we get to that because we got a couple more different segments, so we got plenty of time. I wanted to ask you about what was it like the first week, not your first practice, the first week where you realized, you know what, it's like your aha moment. I belong. I can play here. It's just a matter of time. I think, everybody has it. For me, it was like about week 5 or 6. I was like, okay, I can hang a little bit. When was it for you?
I think it was for me when it was a 9-on-7 drill when I went up against Clinton. And when I first saw Clinton Childs, I was like, holy cow, this is a running back. And I don't look anything like that. And so when I remember just butting up against him and him looking at me going, yeah, I like that, him patting me on the head, that seal of approval for me made me feel as if what I'm doing matters, A, and B, that I am getting better. And everybody, the respect of your peers was like a big deal.
Oh, yeah, it was
like
huge.
If nobody talked to you, that was kind of like a problem. But people were like, hey, good job, and they pat you on the head, and you couldn't quite do a few things, but you knew that you were physical enough and you were playing and you're making plays and you're getting called out. I think by week 2 or 3 for me is when I recognized and started taking pride in the fact that I was wearing that gold jersey, that I knew I wasn't going to be very long before I had a black one.
Right.
And I just knew it. I could see that, but it took that kind of contact in that kind of format. You know, Coach Osborne would scrimmage every week, right? He'd give at least a few plays where we get on the ground.
Right.
And when I was not on the receiving end of contact, and I knew for me, because I wasn't much of somebody who could talk. That's new. Like I was too busy breathing hard.
Yeah.
But the fact when I got up and I was like, and all of a sudden I started talking like you or talking like anybody else, all of a sudden I'm a different person.
Right.
And that was it. That aha light bulb moment. I call that a light bulb moment now with kids that I train and coach.
Right.
When you get that light bulb moment, it's over. It's all downhill from there. You got it. And so that's what I felt. It was 2-3 weeks in, certainly. But it was I remember that contact with Clinton that really turned it on for me and made that change. We're
gonna fast forward to the first, like what you talked about previously, coming out the tunnel. I'm gonna tell everybody, listen, my man, I'd been through it before, so I wouldn't say I was the old veteran yet, but I'd been right where you were, and I was hyped, and I kind of stopped a little bit. I'm gonna tell you this: Tony must have been rehearsing this for all off season, ever since the spring game, all the way through to fall camp. He had to have this down because it was, if we had social media then, it would have went viral because my man was live on stage, like you came out at the Apollo, like here's Tony Ortiz. Talk about that. Give it that story in the next 2 or 3 minutes before we go to break.
You got it. It was such a rush. It was such a rush to hear the tunnel music. You've always heard it when I was a redshirt in the stands, but to be sitting in the tunnel,
it's different.
It's different.
That energy, man.
That energy is a different animal. To sit in that tunnel and to experience that and to walk out of those doors and to feel that crowd, I didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
And so all I remember doing, and I don't even remember it as much as you describing it to me, But all I remember doing was just start. It was a combination of George Jefferson and Ric Flair, and I was just like this overwhelming just rush came about me, and just coming out of there was like a bat out of hell, man. Just roaring and ready to roll, and just this level of confidence, like y'all about to be destroyed.
I think people don't understand about like it's like the buildup, and we had a tight tunnel.
Yes.
When we left the locker room, and then once the doors open, people don't realize it's super loud. But then once you kind of run out there, it goes silent, and then it gets loud again. I mean, it's great. I mean, I always remember my first tunnel walk. I mean, all of them were great. Even when we have our reunion, we get back together, you still feel it. And it's always, I always tell people, going through these things with people that you care about and are friends means more than what these guys are doing, where they play one year on a team, next year on a team. Real quick before we go to break, Tony, if the transfer portal was there when we were playing, this is just off the cuff question. And I'm looking at my question now. I said, you know what? I'm going to just throw it. I've been there, because remember after the Fiesta Bowl, 2 national championships, going to middle linebacker, 24 hours away from me going to Michigan. Now I'm going to put you on the hot spot. If the transfer portal was there at the time when you were maybe your first year, but maybe you got hurt, and then maybe not starting your first year after your redshirt freshman year, would you have jumped in the transfer portal and headed back out there to Happy Valley and been with your boys out there? You would have been out there with your boy Jerry. Tony, we got a meeting.
Coach, 10:00 at night. Why
exactly. Would you have possibly jumped in the portal?
I would have entertained it.
Yeah,
I would have entertained it, because if I would have known that if I would have had access to what these kids have access to today, I would have no choice to entertain it. It was either I entertain it, or the guy that you're putting in front of me is going to entertain it.
Right.
It's going to be one of the two. One of us had to make a decision.
Right.
I think the teams were better because of the fight of the people that were there.
Yeah.
And it made us better because of that level of competition that's lacking today, because people just bounce, and there's nothing behind that anymore. But I think then me and a wave of other people considered it. Would have considered it for sure.
Yeah, I always tell people we didn't have a choice, because nobody wanted to sit out a year, and we already were playing. Our practices were better than Division II or 1AA or FCS. So we would have been down there. We probably would have got bored doing that if we had to go down to go back up. So that's a good first segment. We're going to take a quick break, head to commercial, come back. Then we got to talk about Tony. Me and him are really, really close friends. But we're going to talk about another relationship that he developed with a guy from like Superior, Nebraska, Brian Shaw, and then talk about what he's doing now. So Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, Jay Foreman, special guest Tony Ortiz. We'll be right back. We're back. Jay Foreman, Tony Ortiz, Advanced Medical Imaging, sponsoring Inside the Huddle. I always say, look, man, I'm from Minnesota. I'm by the way of obviously Maryland and D.C. Tony's coming out from New York and Connecticut. From Joel me and Joel Makovica redshirted, and we became good friends, obviously bashing into each other, Hoskinson and all that. But I think one of the coolest stories, and I think this was after I left, and when I was already in Buffalo, I always keep in contact with the guys, and I know that make sure you guys didn't revolt on old Coach Bowl. But talk about the relationship. Let's preface this before. I remember this conversation. I remember we were doing testing out and all that, and me and you had been through it. And we'd push each other. We'd work out together. We'd eat together. We'd make sure, that however we kind of check our weight, make sure we're doing the things we're doing. But I remember when we saw that this gangly looking dude, white dude, Brian Shaw, I was like, I remember telling, man, who the hell is this dude, right? Because he was 6'2", a phenomenal athlete. I think he still holds the short shuttle. Could jump 36, and then he was from like Superior somewhere in Nebraska. I was like, where the hell is that? I was like, I know I ain't going.
DeWeese, Nebraska.
DeWeese, Nebraska. People always tell me I need to get that right. And Brian's a good dude. I love seeing him. Talk about the relationship that you built with Brian through competition, because very easily you could have just went sideways and not talked to each other. You guys pushed each other. Like to think he brought the best out of you, and then you were able to go on and play in the pros and have a great career. Brian's out doing his thing. He's a high school ref, by the way, and
Yeah.
all his kids are better athletes than him. But talk about the relationship that you built with Brian Shaw.
Yeah. The Shaw family were fantastic.
Right.
What a story for them to have a kid walk on to a national powerhouse team,
Right.
growing up in their backyard, and get to have a Brian Shaw day of days, right? They celebrate him in that way. And he was able to come on and put yourself in his shoes. You're going up
Sure.
against a guy who had all these accolades, and you have an opportunity to start and compete, where maybe in another school, they probably wouldn't look twice at you.
Right.
But he's getting an opportunity to get on the field, and he did get on the field, and he played very well. That brought the best out of me. That angered me in a way I've never been bothered before in my life. That I felt like he was taking something from me that was mine. But the reality of it is that I hadn't really put in the same effort on film that I thought I was putting in on the field. There's a difference.
Right.
Difference between, not to say that he's the smartest man on the planet and I was the dumbest man on the planet, but the thing that separated us essentially that I could admit to was that he knew what he was doing when he was doing it.
Right.
I relied on my talent to make up for any mistakes that I made. Brian tried to minimize as many mistakes as he possibly could, and that kept him on the field. When I learned to do that from him, catching him in Coach Sam's office by himself, studying film, studying himself, when we had a conversation, I was like, what is it that you do that's different? Because I'm frustrated with not you, but with myself. And he was like, man, all I'm trying to do is just be better the next day than I was the previous day. And I just watch myself and I correct myself. And I started doing that. The physical I had down.
Right. Yeah.
It was the mental I didn't quite get. And that was because I didn't take advantage of understanding the scheme of what we were doing. And it changed my life forever. Once I understood my why in that defense and understood what Charlie was trying to get accomplished and my role in that, or that linebacker's role in that, the game was even faster than I thought it was going to be. And that drove me. And we became better friends because of that conversation.
Right.
We became better athletes because of that conversation. If you remember Hanging with the Huskers, that show that Coach Solich would host, they did a series or an episode where I went to his home.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was in the paper and everything. That was pretty cool.
It was a very cool experience for me. I've never been on a farm in my freaking life.
Have you been on one since?
No.
Exactly.
It's forever to get out there.
Yeah.
But it was the best experience I ever had. I met his parents. I met his little sister at the time.
Right.
I kind of got to see where he came from and what life was like in rural America, and what that was like for him, and how important football was to his family, how important football was to his town, how important he was to his town. He very much to his people, and by that I mean his town. He was as important to them as I were to the people that I come from.
Right.
And when it comes to what people who look at me that grew up with my father, that say, when you made it, we made it.
Right.
And that's how people in Deweese look at him, and people in those surrounding Sandy Creek and those surrounding towns that we grew up. So that relationship was special to me, especially the last 2 to 3 years, because when I ended up getting the nod to start, it was because of the things that I learned from him that got me to a position where we can't keep him off the field.
Right.
And then the rotation began, and it was what it was in sharing the role and going out there and just contributing to the team and just being the best we can be and supporting each other and all those types of things. And it was a healthy competition. It's been a healthy relationship ever since, and keeping up with him and his family. So it was a special part of my tenure there.
Yeah, I think people don't understand the type of competition that we had just on a daily basis. I mean, even, when I moved to middle linebacker, you're still playing Sam with Brian, and then we had, whether it's Julius Jackson, Carlos, Ben Butenbach, Jamel when he was, obviously still around,
EJ,
Harley, EJ, and then obviously
Tavy.
Tavy. When we got on the line to run 10s, or we did 5-yard starts or the 10-yard shot, whatever we were doing, we were looking down the line every single time because we loved each other like brothers, right? Yeah. And if it was time, if we were somewhere we had to throw hands, we're gonna be back to back. But we did not want to give an inch to anyone.
That's right.
When we competed, and that's in anything. And people don't understand, I think, and talk about this, Tony, how when we would be in group work in spring ball, I said, man, you know, my third or fourth year, I hated spring ball because all we doing is take-ons, footwork, hands, and it's hot, and we doing millions. Because remember, our group work used to be like 20, 25 minutes.
That's
Remember when we go through the drills and I'd be like, we're going through the NFL experience. That's what we was doing, man. We was listen, them ropes. If I'm telling you, if you had a long night the night before, them ropes gonna come up and get you.
They're gonna get you.
Right. Talk about the breeding ground of good, hard competition amongst that linebacker room, which allowed us to essentially, when we stepped out there, we were pulling for each other. Yeah. Talk about that, because I think that's huge, and that led to you obviously to obviously winning the starting spot. But I think it's a brotherhood that people just don't understand, because we went through it and they will never be able to experience it.
People will. It's hard to explain to people who, for two reasons. One, there weren't many schools that were that deep in talent. Yeah. If I retrospectively, when you look back, there weren't that many schools that had 8. You were too deep at every position, maybe even 3. Yeah. With guys who had the pedigree to start anywhere else. That's why the portal is such an interesting question, because if that was then, that group would have been depleted, because they can be All-Americans at any school that you throw them to, but they chose to stay. So it made Nebraska a very special place, but it made that position room a very special group of guys, because of A, how humble they were, and B, how angry and hungry that they were in wanting to compete for every inch, whatever they can. I mean, I'm talking about how many glasses of milk you got to how many glasses of milk I got at training table. How much creatine?
Yeah,
steak,
all that.
Yeah, you ate the potatoes and steak, and we were roommates, right? So once he's eating potato, I tell him, let me get a potato in the microwave. You know, those things were going on. That was contagious. I don't know any other group, offensive line, running backs, receivers. I don't know any other group that you can name that were as athletic and competitive as our group was, because of how deep we were. And if a guy went down, I mean, if you think about, I can cite examples of how hungry guys were. EJ, when he would dislocate his shoulder, they would have to take the guy's helmet away, because you couldn't take him off the field. I had 13 stitches in my mouth in the middle of a game, and I'm like, if you take me out, we're gonna fight. And and I would get pissed off if I see Brian coming in. Brian would get pissed off if you see me coming in, or I would get pissed off if I see Joe Walker coming in for me. Those types of things.
Oh yeah, we did not like them little pipsqueaks.
Like nickel.
Because here's the problem, man. Here's what people don't understand: is Coach Darlington would over recruit, and then them dudes couldn't play safety, so he's like, "Oh, we're just gonna just throw him in there a linebacker, and just we always got the the dookie stick coming downhill." We was like, "Hey, we can run."
That's right.
We was running, we was jumping, cover. So I mean, people don't understand the type of competition what we had. One more thing I want to ask you before we go to break. I always tell people, after you win a national championship, there's nothing like it, because we were so laser focused it's step by step. It was business, it was fun, it was pleasure, it was hard, it sucked a lot of times. But talk about being in that locker room and looking around like, okay, we accomplished our goal, but there was nothing else to do. And then we were like, we're the best, without a doubt. It's relief, but then it also sets the hunger for more. Talk about that, because people don't understand what it's like to win the big one.
Well, I certainly learned what it was like in 95, watching the guys react to what they did from 94, right? So being part of that 95 team as a freshman, and watching the guys work who just won it in 94 as if they didn't win it in 94 was amazing to me. That in and of itself, that level of work, and just listening to the older guys talk and preach about something as if they hadn't won it. They treated 94 as if it never happened. And then 95 was it, right? So the attitude of that, your potential back-to-back, that didn't exist. It was, we're getting this like it's the first one. And so anything less than that was failure. And so when we were sitting in that locker room, I'm like, oh shit, we won it. Now what? And
Right.
you got to tape it up and get ready to do it all over again.
Right.
And that was the attitude for 96 and 97. It was just amazing to me to have experienced that. It was this relief. And then it's like 24 hours. And then after 24 hours is up, as if it never happened. And now we got to go get it again. And that's what that felt like.
Right back in the weight room. You know what's funny, Tony? Is like, these dudes go to bowl games, or we haven't been to a bowl game in obviously a long time, but they get so much. Their winter breaks is like to the middle of January. People don't understand. We play in Miami when we beat Tennessee, and then we get to go home.
You get 1 week,
right? If that,
maybe 2.
If that, 1 week at the most, and then we're back on campus, back in classes. I think obviously times have changed and everything, and for their case, for the better. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to end the segment. Tony's going to tell us what he's doing right now. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging. We'll be right back. All right, last segment with my man Tony. We got to do this again, man, because you know what, Tony?
This is fun.
Well, here's the thing is we're going to have some stuff that we're going to have this is the PG version. Then we're going to do something just to highlight I texted you about the black shirts. It's going to be behind a paywall. And so we'll be able to tell all the stories about when my man Tony Ortiz took Kareem's, or Jason Wilson ate his steak, and the thing with Kareem and in the shorts and the jock strap that just looked a little discolored after 2 days, and the stories about EJ with the certificate of health, all that type of stuff. We talk about EJ because he's places that he shouldn't be in. Anyways, for the people that know, Tony gets back every once in a while, but is doing some great things down in the Dallas Frisco area. Tony, when we put this out, we'll put all your social media and stuff like that. We got plenty of Husker fans down there in Dallas, but tell everybody what you're doing and what you're up to, because you're doing a lot of great things. Because them little dudes you got playing football, boy, they got that. Hey, they attacking. Oh, I love that dog. Tell everybody what you're doing.
So a couple of irons in the fire. First and foremost, married, blessed to be married, about 22 years now, 3 kids. One's in college. The other one is about to be a graduate of high school in a couple of weeks, and the other one's getting ready for high school. And so dealing with those knuckleheads. Outside of that, my 9-to-5 job is here at Optimal Blue. I'm at work today, in the office today, but as an implementation project manager for a mortgage pricing engine. And I got some funny stories where I used to call Jay and prank call him and tell him about his mortgage rates being too high. And so, but today I'm also owner of LBU, Linebacker University. So Tony Ortiz Linebacker University. This is a youth training program I developed about 10, 15 years ago with my own kids and teaching them how to play the game in multiple positions and learning those positions myself. Started at the linebacker position of what was my bread and butter, and then learning other positions by volunteering my time at a multitude of camps, going there for free, working for free over a 10-year period, learning positions from different coaches, learning how to do things from different organizers, and really absorbing a lot of that information like a GA would when he goes and works at any school, and then applying that to my business. And so it's really taking off. I'm also on the board here locally for Frisco Football League, which is on its 27th year in serving the community. 1,800 kids between flag, tackle, and cheer that we serve that play in a recreational sport from 5 years old to 12 years old. I helped develop what's called a rookie tackle program that took off nationally. We had we had a Super Bowl commercial on it through USA Football.
Right. I did see that.
It's really cool. It's just developmental football that starts 6-on-6 and then 8-on-8 and graduates to 11-on-11. And so, but Linebacker U is just something that's my passion. It's guiding young folks. And I coach. Also, it's my golf. I don't play golf. I'm not very good at it, but football is my golf. And so I coach youth football, multiple age groups as a way to give back and a way to communicate with kids and teach them the game as I learned it. And like I said, just be involved in what I love to do and just be around young kids and from a football perspective and lead and have a lot of fun. So that's where I am today.
Yeah, man, that's awesome, man. I mean, every time that you put it on your story. One of your your students are saying, "Hey, coach, I'm doing this." And I always tell people, man, for me, I coach basketball and train some kids in football. There's nothing better than going. In my case, high school kids going on a Friday night and seeing them get the fruits of their labor, but being excited about something that you taught them, giving back, and that's what we were taught. From the older guys passing it on down. So it's just a natural transition, man. But like I said, we're going to have more of these on Inside the Huddle. We're going to transition it to Black Church for Life podcast. It's going to be behind a paywall. We got some big things coming starting in the spring all the way to the fall. I love having my man. We need 3 hours.
Yeah.
We need
got to the surface.
3 hours. We need to graduate. We need to start in the G version. That's what we did then. Then we go to PG-13, and then we can go to one NSFW, not safe for work environment. But nevertheless, Tony, thank you for taking time out of your day, coming in and
thank you.
Blessing for your story. We're gonna have you back, man, because we're gonna do it, and then we're gonna get a community call between me, you, Steve Warren, who we like to call Woo Woo, and we'll get Carlos Polk when he gets a little bit of a break from his coaching duties. But nevertheless, Tony Ortiz, we're gonna blow you up on social media. I'll hit you offline, my brother. Thank you. God bless you, man. Be good. I'll holler at you.
Love you, man. Appreciate you, brother.